right, we're looking through a number of points, I think almost 60. Original man was the superior man. He did not evolve. So all this evolutionary discoveries, quote unquote, of man gradually evolving into modern day man is bogus. Original man was the superior man. We have all evidence of that as we look through scriptures and evidence that we have from archaeology. The capacity of man was far advanced and didn't have to evolve. We're looking at the artistic capacity, the artistic appreciation that man has. All in the Bible says, all such as handle the harp and the organ. The community of guild or association is most definitely implicated within that statement. Responsive appreciation and harmony with skillful dexterity would warrant applause from any historian looking back on this generation. Responsibility, assumption. An instructor of every artificer. The text could imply that the instructor worked with every single individual who was learning to work as an artisan, or that he worked with individuals in various kinds of implements. In either case, the responsibility is phenomenal. Didn't have to evolve. Instructional comprehension. Instructor of everything. Cultural anthropologists and archaeologists have occupied decades in documenting isolated cultures in an attempt to follow their growth patterns from implement fabrication to instructional repetition. When this facility is verified, the colony is identified as being industrialized. Such is the case in this text. The Bible reports this, and so far it's the best indicator of what early man, original man, was like. Systematic education. Instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the intent of the text is that each succeeding student is referred to the primary instructor, or the artisans that are returning to the primary instructor as they take on work with new materials. The result is the same. Systematic instruction is established when the community or the entire culture. That's an advanced man, but that's original man. Technical advancement in brass and iron. Those who examine ancient civilizations separate brass and iron into distinct eras of development. Specific technology is required in the research, even if it is trial and error, and repeatable methods of fabricating implements from metallic bases. The purpose in making specific implements involved in an advancement in the use of tools. Spanning both eras in the fabrication and purposeful use of the instrumentation demands a comprehension and assimilation at least equal to our own advanced civilization, and it probably deserves a designation superior to our own. Recall that mankind doesn't reinvent the wheel. We start with the wheel, add things like automobiles, engines, and all kinds of sophisticated electronics. We don't turn around. The next generation doesn't invent the wheel again. So our civilization is not that far advanced over others in terms of technological implements. Attire awareness. Lamech said unto his two wives, Adah and Zillah. In the original Hebrew, the name Adah means elegant and ornament. Names are given designating a characteristic held by persons being named or renamed, or a characteristic desired by the people giving the name. It's getting warm again. Such designations are given in reference to a known commodity or characteristic within the sphere of experience. Ornamentation and attire must have been observed in order to make such a distinction within the naming of an individual. So you can read the rest of these. We're going through this. Don't want to bear down, but personal defense, comparative justice, judicial consensus, logistic reasoning, speech declamation, peer relationships, reputation status, emotional response, providential compensation, historical perspective, obituarial documentation, religious influence, genetic superiority. They lived a lot longer. Genetic viability. All these you can look up. And down for for the comparative understanding of what the original man was like. He couldn't have survived unless he had these capacities. So, we'll go back to some of the discoveries that are aware in rock strata or in other archaeological sites. Dr. Boss says in the area of Cro-Magnon man, or Magdalenian period Stone Age man, a very high sophistication capability has been evidenced, not only in his ability to draw in the caves, but also in a documented bit of evidence which verifies the concept of the orchestral creation mode. This concept supports the notion that ancient man was a sophisticated man, and by ancient man we are not far removed from him in time, not nearly as far as the evolutionists would suppose. René Nurbergen relates in a discovery he made in a cave near Lussac-les-Cateaux, 1937. Perricard and Wolff uncovered a number of engraved stones dating from the Magdalenian period, which drastically altered the accepted picture. The flat stones showed men and women in casual poses, wearing robes, boots, belts, coats, and hats. One engraving is a profile of a young lady who appears to be sitting and watching something. She is dressed in a pantsuit with a short-sleeved jacket, a pair of small boots, and a decorated hat that flops down over her right ear and touches her shoulder. Resting on her lap is a square, flat object that folds down the front, very much like a modern purse. Other examples show men wearing well-tailored pants and coats, broad belts with clasps, and cropped beards and mustaches. The Lussac models are by no means the only evidence of sophisticated dress from the Stone Age period. Prehistoric cave printings from the Kalahari Desert of southwest Africa, dated within the Stone Age period, show light-skinned men with blonde beards and well-styled hair wearing boots, tight-fitting pants, multicolored shirts, and coats and gloves. Such accounts of the earliest history of man do not indicate that he was a brute beast. In fact, the opposite is true. Man, when he appeared on the earth, was very sophisticated. Anthropological and historical records show that man has from time to time lived in caves. The Nebaiotians, an advanced and resourceful people, lived almost entirely in caves in the Petra area of southern Jordan. There are areas in the world today where environmental factors still make cave dwelling preferable. Consider the worldwide flood. That changed the surface of the earth, and so the advanced societies then that started from there, Noah and the Eight, and grew into a society, they at first, with the worldwide flood's effect on the surface of the earth, had to start primitively, but they had sophisticated capacity and soon stepped out of that and went back to their sophisticated ways. The fact that man was able to display superior characteristics at the very beginning of his existence, a composite picture of an intelligent and compassionate human being, shows that man had to be created. He could not have evolved. Man possessed superior characteristics and arrived on the scene fully mature. This evident truth supports the concept of orchestrated creation. When you had the ice ages after the flood, man had to, with his sophisticated characteristics, still had to buckle down and use the best he can with caves and other instruments in order to be able to survive. And now we have sophisticated man, but he's not better than man originally. Man first was created with vastly superior genetic characteristics, lived far longer than we do now, but after the fall his genetic makeup was thereby altered, such that it was tremendously limited and it deteriorated from generation to generation. The longer you live, the more you can learn. They lived hundreds and hundreds of years originally. Man has a unique soul, signifying a supreme designer. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the livestock, over the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created man, male and female. He created them. So, this shows the plurality of the Godhead with singular verbs, showing the plurality of the personalities of God, but one God. You can read this. We've already gone over this. See what else we can pick up. All right. Conceptual thought, not evolutionary possibility, but designed by supremely superior mentality. A.E. Wilder Smith. Right and left-handed forms of certain molecules possess an identical state of order and so cannot possibly be separated by unaided chemical means. So the design, left amino acids, right-handed sugars are both necessary for living systems, but ordinary chemical reactions cannot supply them in an evolutionary manner. Only the information in molecules that can recognize patterns can sort out the left from the right forms. So the makeup of man demands an intelligent designer. Too long to evolve. Virtually all forms of life show specific orientation either left or right. And all forms of life have their equivalent of the DNA molecule as a reservoir of information. Conceptual information must have played its role in origins so as to supply the third dimension required for the super-miniaturization of information storage and retrieval, in addition to standard organic chemistry, time, and energy. So life's origin must then have occurred under the influence of conceptual information somewhere down the line, thus enabling the separation of right from left-hand molecules of identical state of order. If this conceptual information could not rise directly from the material properties of matter, and it doesn't, then surely it is perfectly justified scientific question to ask just where this conceptual information might have originated, couldn't have evolved, had it been there in the first place, in order to make man of this capacity that he has demonstrated from the beginning. Now, we're still looking at the incredibly complex design of all life forms, points to a supreme designer, the God of the Bible. Variations in life forms, micro-variation, not macro-evolution, design within each species for variation within the species. Not evolution, it's God's design. The only way to be able to accomplish this is through design, not evolution. The two scholars, Drs. Peter and Rosemary Grant, observed how, under drought conditions, birds with larger beaks were better adapted than others, thus their percentage of survival increased, and their percentage of population. But this trend reversed when the cyclical conditions reversed. Furthermore, in times of drought, the normally separate species were observed to crossbreed. They are related after all. Darwin was right. But within a species. But is this really evolution? No, not macro, from species to species. Even after the change, there is still the same array of beak sizes and shapes. This is variation and adaptation, not evolution. They're still birds. They're still the same species of bird. Actually, de-evolution has occurred. The observation is that there are larger groupings of species into what may be more reminiscent of the originally created kind. Creation agrees with Darwin's observations and with newer observations, but evolution doesn't, even though the Grants interpreted this as rapid evolution. Wonderful study, great data, wrong interpretation. Dr. Patton says in tape, What is Creation Science? Overview of Evidence. We need to remember that variation does not prove the general theory of evolution. Variation within the species. The creationist would predict variation, but there would be limits to that variation. We want to begin by looking at the evidence that was observed by Charles Darwin. What did he see that causes him to conclude that the evidence favored evolution as an explanation of origins? Charles Darwin made a trip as a naturalist on the ship the Beagle around the world, and particularly the Galapagos Islands. He was able to observe things that he thought supported evolution. We'll learn about this next time.